My subordinates looked carefully at me as I read reports and data slates. They were hopeful. So was I, to be honest, but the more I read along, the more my hope died. I stopped my reading, looking carefully at my countrymen. Their faces wore expressions of friendliness, hope, and piety. They were looking to me for leadership, answers, anything. I didn't have any. Their expressions changed to fit the mood as I simply laid my head in my hands. General Tomback, normally the most stoic and silent of all of them, broke from his honorable vigil by laying his head on the desk, sobbing. Admiral Olnar procured a bottle of wadrot and started drinking. The Secretary of the Treasury helped himself to a glass of it before the Master of Agriculture stole the glass and gulped it down before anyone could protest. The scene that played out in front of me was little more than a small-scale version of what was inevitably going to happen across the entire nation. As the room descended into sobbing and madness, I looked over the reports one more time. Crop yields produced barely 30% of what they made last season. We have enough stocks if we ration carefully to last us next year. Then it's over. At the rate the soil is depleting, the next harvest will be the last. Compounding that, the water supply is running low. We have the choice of either watering crops or feeding the people. We can't do both. Power infrastructure is collapsing with rolling blackouts, meaning the water purifiers and treatment plants can't run long enough to actually do any work. Power generators are now almost out of fuel. We have enough electricity supply to last us maybe a month if, and only if, we shut down everything except the hospitals and water pumps. Rationing is out of control. Entire families are starving on one meal every 2 days if they are rich or poor. On some occasions, families have been forced to take in orphans because the parents starved, feeding their kids instead of themselves. No rioting. But that won't last long once supplies are gone. We have 6 months of food, if we only eat once every week, maybe. Then after that, I shook my head at the implication and continued looking through the data slates. Something, anything. There has to be something we could do. I tried to think a bit. I stood from the desk and looked out the window. My face turned to even greater despair when I saw the dead grass, its blue coloration replaced by brown and red. The trees were slowly dying out now. Even at the height of spring, no flowers, no leaves, just browns and grays. I returned to my seat and went right back to despair. I tried to think. The men in front of me began to throw fisticuffs and insults. Blame began to be thrown about and tempers flared. Just then, one of the soldiers barged in, highly irregular, but he was agitated. His large eyes were more expressive than usual. He burst in the room and immediately charged towards me, ignoring the usual necessary bows and salutes. He slammed his hands on the table, shaking me from my concentrated despair. Then, in the loudest voice he could muster, yelled out, "Aliens!" Everyone suddenly stopped what they were doing and looked at him, bewildered. He slammed a set of papers on the table. They were a series of images. At first it was grainy. I could only make out various dots and shapes. The next image showed they were getting closer. I could see jagged edges, smooth contours, and could approximate sizes. The next image revealed details like insignias and armor plating, cannons, weapons, the soft glow of a shield. I looked up at him. These pictures were taken by the old courier probe that was launched 10 years ago. They just passed by Cordos. The Colinoir Observatory can see them. I looked at the final picture in the set. There were thousands of them. All of them were heavily armed. Very heavily armed. One of them could take on entire platoons worth of men. And there were thousands. "Oh, gods, now what? What do we do?" "As if things weren't bad enough," Admiral Olto said, now focusing less on strangling General Faltax. "What's the ETA? How long do we have to prepare?" Field Commander Relin asked, taking a look at the pictures. "We have 10 minutes before they reach orbit, probably less," the soldier said. "Strange insignia. Brown and green coloration. What a very odd military force. I can see they are heavily armed, but the color scheme seems strange." The Secretary of Agriculture said, "That's your concern? The paint job? Look at the size of those cannons." "Shut up!" I yelled out. The group quickly scrambled back to their seats. I waited until they were all quiet and at full attention. "I don't care if the crops fail. I don't care if the waters are worthless. This is my planet, my home, and I will defend it to my last breath. If our last moments on this ball of rock are dying to a hail of plasma fire, then so be it. Ready our defenses." The leaders of our nation gathered their intellect and strength faster than I could imagine and began planning defenses. And sure enough, within a few minutes, panic gripped the world as confirmation appeared above the skies. Within hours, we were underground in secure bunkers in command centers. Civilians were in their basements saying their last goodbyes, and soldiers had mustered to arms. I sat around the board table with the other leaders, and we were exchanging ideas as reports started coming in. Any news? Have they landed yet? Several reports of units landing in the polar regions. Scouts report that some ships are walkers. Hexapod design with large heads. We can't tell if they are armed or not. They look similar to survey craft, Admiral Soranis said. The larger craft appear to be fully fledged starships. One has landed in the ocean and has started doing something. The other 5 craft have remained in orbit. We have 600 or so of those hexapod machines and 200 quadrupedal machines starting landings across the planet now. We have reports from the Katani and Gardanti empires, too, the Secretary of Defense said next, pointing at locations on the planet's surface. This makes no sense, I said, looking carefully at the intel. This makes no sense from a military standpoint, see? They are forming a strange hexagonal pattern, 200 kilometers apart from each other. What are they doing? Perhaps a military strategy is not needed. Look, they are heavily shielded, and look at the guns on that one. They don't need tactics when you have that kind of overwhelming force. Admiral Soranis pointed out several pictures of the more complicated-looking machines. That may be the case, but look, what is this? I can see 3 distinct classes of machine. What are they doing? The smaller one seems to be some kind of defense unit. The middle-sized one appears to be a drilling unit of some kind. The larger ones don't move from that position, and what is that thing on its top? Some kind of emitter array? These don't look military to me, I asked, pointing out various anomalies. We are getting some kind of interference in our radio communications. They are definitely interfering with our comms, so that's a military action. The signal is strange, though. It's a series of short and long beeps and nothing else. We can filter it out and communicate, but still. The secretary spoke next, turning his radio filter off so we could listen. This does not make any sense. They've been here for 2 hours now. Why haven't they attacked? And what is that ship in the ocean doing? My fleet just told me it went into the trash vortex of the Cranian Ocean. It looks like it's consuming garbage, Admiral Soranis said as he brought up a short video of the ship using its bulk to vacuum up garbage. We have reports of more starships entering the system, followed by more of those walkers. Thousands. They will be in orbit within a few hours, but they are still more of the same. Smaller armed craft escorting medium-sized driller units. The larger hexapods seem to have either limited or no weaponry. If this is an invasion, it's a bad invasion. The Secretary of Defense pointed out some inconsistencies. Like I said, overwhelming force. They don't need tactics when you have this kind of tech, with this kind of power. Maybe it is a piss-poor strategy, but do you think they need to care? Admiral Soranis spoke up, getting sideways glances from the others. Outside, it was a mixture of order and chaos. Civilians running around trying to secure their families while soldiers carefully shepherded them around to try to avoid chaos. The few vehicles we had still in operation were buzzing around as carefully as possible so we could save what little fuel we had left. The fact the machines were large enough to be seen in the distance was not helping calm everyone down. The machines themselves, apart from the clunking and screeching as they stomped over the ground, were randomly emitting strange electronic screeching noises and loud squeals that echoed over the desert for hundreds of kilometers. The sounds of rocket engines and starship thrusters also rocked the atmosphere, creating even greater panic. Something isn't right here. I spoke over the noise of the command station. Why is their logo a cartoon tree? I pointed towards a close-up photo of the larger machine that was closest to us. Prominently on its sides of the head of the machine was a picture that looked like a circle surrounding a cartoon tree. Getting new reports, sir. New machines have landed. They are dropping in close to cities. The lights flickered and the ground shook as we felt the massive machines land above us, followed by the muffled screams of those who witnessed it and immediately began panicking. We started hearing the desperate clang of gunfire as panicked citizens and soldiers started to open fire. Reports began flooding in of the machines being hit by our weapons and our guns doing nothing, not even scratching the paint. The few vehicles we had began to fire the few shells we had in stock, only for the shells to disintegrate harmlessly against the machine's shields. I stood up from my seat and walked to the door. "Sir, what in the red sky are you doing?" my commander yelled out as he tried to stop me. "Those are my people!" I yelled out, and startled my fellows. A moment of shocked silence followed. "Look around you. Our food supplies will run out completely within the next year. Our water supply is contaminated to such an extent we don't have a future anyway. And look at this shit. Look at it. The planet is already dead. We already know it." Everyone hung their heads in sorrow and shame. Our entire future now consists of a few wealthy and powerful individuals hoarding the last remaining resources and hiding in bunkers until eventually the gene pool gets thin enough to sterilize them or supplies run out, if not get eaten by the few desperate people that still remain. I refuse to be a part of that world. I was elected to serve this nation. I dedicated my entire damned life to service. If this world is to die, then I swear I shall die with it. I shoved my subordinates aside and walked out the door. I walked with my head high through the steel-reinforced corridor, where eventually I encountered my people. Mothers and crying children huddled in corners and against the walls, cowering from the clanging noises and gunfire. The few men who were too starved or weakened to fight were with them, holding their families. I smiled my best smile at them as I walked outside. "Hold your fire!" I said, "Hold your fire, damn it!" The sergeant on duty yelled through his comms, trying to rally his men and stop the panic. Some men ignored him and continued to meaninglessly expend ammunition we didn't have. He grabbed several panicking soldiers and belted them one right across their faces, yanking their weapons away and sitting them down, trying to calm them. I saw it firsthand. It was just standing there, staring at us. Massive beast of heavy metal the size of a 20-story building, 6 bulbous legs with massive claws for feet that dug into the ground. Mounted on top, almost like a crab, was a huge head with spiky protrusions jutting from it, a combination of both antennae and heavy armor plating. The plating looked arranged just so, giving the machine a sort of face, with 2 large red streaks serving as its eyes. I stared it down, opened my arms, and screamed out, "Do your worst! Do you hear me, machine? We have endured greater threats than you. We shall always endure. Do your damned worst!" I got a cheer of support and enthusiasm from my advisors, followed by all of us readying our weapons for a final firefight. The machine moved, tilting its head down and forward, directly looking at me. It spoke in perfect Iridian, its voice echoing across the area for miles. "As you wish." Its visage changed to a bright green, and it began to emit massive amounts of energy. I closed my eyes. Others followed my lead, and we prepared for the end. It never came. Planetary recalibration preparation in progress. Each machine across the planet spoke in perfect unison, their voices echoing across countless miles, empty toxic oceans and open deserts. I stood silent and still, as if I was expecting death to haul me away into oblivion. Nothing happened. Toxic filtration system activated. Carbon refactoring system activated. Charging main release vector. I opened one eye sheepishly, cheating the death I had apparently been promised. The only thing I saw was the giant machine being swallowed by a mass of green and blue energy particles. "Genetic cloning operation ready. Wildlife reseeding system operational." What? Cloning? Wildlife reseeding? Toxic filtration? What were these machines doing? My arms grew tired and fell to my side. I looked around me. Most had given up as I did and were simply looking around to see what the blazes was going on. Planetary recalibration preparation complete. Everyone was dumbstruck, unable to respond, and just stood there. Having heard the machine's echoing words and lack of gunfire, families and children filtered out from the bunker and stood to watch. "System active." The energy collected and blasted upwards into the skies like a pillar of light leading to the heavens. The entire planet was instantly blanketed in a shield of green and blue as the energy dispersed. Atmospheric pressure shielding at maximum. Refactoring gravitational field. Complete. For a split second, we felt a little lighter, then a little heavier, then normal again. Recalibration procedure commenced. T-minus 31 minutes to completion. Stand by. The world around us began to shift and change. The area immediately surrounding the machine withered away what little life was left in the ground with a static shock of some kind, then a bubble of green and blue energy began to radiate around it. As the bubble contacted the ground, life instantly appeared. The all-too-familiar blue grass of our planet, grass I had not seen in over a decade, began to grow in furious force as months of growth took place in mere seconds. The trees in the surrounding forest regained their purple-hued leaves and brown-gray trunks, the entire horizon suddenly disappearing behind a forest of beautiful foliage and nature. The dirt and sand under our feet vanished beneath a thick carpet of grass. Any spot that had exposed soil of any kind or quality now had patches of flowers or a thick carpet of grass saturating its every available surface. It was at this moment I captured the most beautiful sunset I had ever seen. The mountains superimposed in the background, a freshly fallen blanket of snow topping the peak with the first storm clouds seen in over 10 years, now slowly closing in on the horizon. The sunlight now of purple and gold shining through the tree branches, saturating the world in a beautiful soft glow, a mixture of gold and purple. The storm clouds over the horizon gathered ever closer, and the thunderous rumble of approaching rain could be heard above the noise of the machines. Rain. I looked around me and saw the children with fear on their faces. Most of them had never even seen rain or a storm, so were now clutching their parents' hands tightly, clinging to them for safety. The sunlight vanished and the darkness kept at bay only by the soft light of the machine's energy. A wave of celebration and elation overcame us all as the first drops of rain felt in 10 years began to hit the ground. As if overcome by a strange force, all of us began to dance in the rain. Flailing arms and tapping feet began to join the chorus of fresh water falling from the sky, bathing both us and the ground in life-giving water. We forgot ourselves for the next few hours and simply danced away the night until we got too wet or tired and retreated to our bunkers or homes to sleep. While we were asleep, the machines continued their work. In the morning, I awoke and walked outside. Barely moments later, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in 40 years, the loud territorial shriek of a swallowtail squall. I looked, and indeed, there it was, its long, angular beak waving at me as it flapped its leathery wings defensively. The machine still stood in silence nearby, its energy fields dissipated. Now the only thing heard was the quiet hum of nature's beautiful sounds. Noises I thought I would never again hear filled my mind, and for the first time in as long as I can remember, I took a deep, long breath of the freshest, sweetest air I have ever had. Slowly, as the other people woke up and joined me, I walked around, and for the first time since forever, I took my shoes off and felt the beautiful softness of blue grass underneath my feet. A few hours past morning, the machine startled us all as it began moving again. It stomped its way through the ground and looked straight at us. Its voice boomed through the beautiful skies, and everyone, everywhere, could hear it for miles. Even those underground still could hear it. "We are humanity. You are not alone anymore. Listen and listen well. The terraforming procedures we just completed are nothing more than a measure to buy you time. This planet's biosphere is too unstable. It will die eventually, want it or not. Focus your efforts now on getting into space and colonizing other worlds. You have been supplied with fuel, tech, equipment, and enough food to give you a chance that we never had. Do not waste it. We will be waiting for you." The machines began to lift themselves into the air and off the planet, and within mere minutes, we were alone again. I took a long, deep breath one more time as we waved our saviors goodbye. The chaos began anew as commanders and officers began barking orders and securing supplies left by the humans' machines. Hydrogen engines, wind turbine blueprints, water filtration units, and hydrofusion reactors. It was all up to us at this point. Tech we could only dream of was at our fingertips. "We are coming, humanity. We owe you a beer."